Let's talk about the time that I got fired and started a business. Hi, I'm Danielle Locke. I'm your nonprofit success partner, and you're here on Fundraising Unfiltered, a bullshit-free podcast for nonprofit leaders juggling fundraising, leadership, and chaos. We're going to serve up real stories, smart solutions, and laugh out loud moments along the way. All right, so it's time that we figured in the very first episode that we should talk about how I started. 7 years ago, I was working for Community Foundation, a job I really absolutely loved. I had learned at the heels of the CEO, who pretty much, I think, wrote the book on community foundations. He traveled the world establishing community foundations in places like Latvia and Germany and taught organizations how to run community foundations. It's an amazing model. If you're not familiar, community foundations are usually geographically based. They are made up of typically endowment funds, which are dollars that you invest, and then only the interest is used to make grants or scholarships. Every community foundation is different. There are thousands and thousands of them around the world, and right here in the United States, there are probably over 1,000 at this point. So I was really in love with the organization. It was in my home community in which I grew up. I was well known. My board loved me. My staff loved me. I was really good at my job. In 5 years, established more than 130 endowment funds and raised some $30 million. But in 2017, my beloved CEO decided to retire at the early age of 61 so he could consult and go fly fishing. And the board of directors brought in a new CEO. I did apply for that job. I was not considered for that job. And I was heartbroken, but I knew that this was the place that I needed to be. And so I welcomed the new CEO and supported her to the best of my ability. But a year later, we came to a point as we were going through strategic planning where I really didn't see the organization going in a direction that I wanted to support. The decisions that were being made were not the decisions that I would have made as the CEO of the organization. I really thought I saw myself as the CEO eventually, but that was clearly not going to happen. After a board meeting, a really wonderful board meeting where board members meet and staff sit along the side and answer questions and give feedback as necessary, I did take the opportunity, with the permission of my CEO, to speak up and to acknowledge, not myself, but to recognize the great work that was happening at the administrative level with our finance and our administrative team. Because at that moment in time, the organization was going through a massive data conversion, moving from one data system to another. And I just really wanted the board to know the great things were happening at the staff level. That being said, very shortly thereafter the board meeting, my CEO invited me to the conference room, and I said, okay, I grabbed my notebook and I met her in the conference room along with 2 board members, who then proceeded to tell me that today was my last day and that I could either resign or take the termination. I took a moment to gather myself, hold back the tears, and ask why. And the answer to me was simply provided that my vision for the organization didn't align with the organization, with the direction that they were going, which ultimately is true, but I certainly didn't want to leave the organization. That being said, I also know that I was not prepared financially. Our family wasn't prepared financially, so I took the termination with the opportunity to be able to collect unemployment, and also they offered me a severance package and a payout for my PTO, and it was all, quite generous. They then helped me pack up my office. The board members escorted me to my office, helped me pack all of my stuff, my books, my binders, my notes, everything, my plants, filled up my car and sent me on my way. The staff was unable to say goodbye. They weren't informed of my termination until after I had left the building. They called them into the conference room, into the big boardroom, and told them, to which they were greeted by guttural sobs. And I don't say that to stroke my ego, but the fact is that we as an organization, as a staff, were very close. When I say my work family, I'm telling you that these people were there. They were there at my mother's funeral. They were there when my father's Alzheimer's became more difficult. They were all at my wedding. They were there when I got pregnant. They had a baby shower for me. My son took some of his first steps in their hallway. So to say that we were a close group can never be expressed fully how much I loved them and that staff loved me. So what did I do? I called my husband, who thought I was playing a bad joke on him. And I said, no, it's real. My car's full full of my shit. Let's go. And so we met for lunch and obviously figured out a budget situation and what I was going to do. At that point, he said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I could get a job, but we have a little bit of a nest egg now. I think that I could consult. I think that nonprofits need my help to raise money. I know that there's money out there. I know that they are just scared and they don't know what to do. And I feel like I could really help them. And my husband said, well, what does that look like? And I said, I don't know. And he said, can nonprofits pay you to help them? And I said, I don't know. And so we said, okay, a couple of months, let's give it a try and see what happens. And the truth is that was October. By November, I had my first client. By January, I had 4 clients. And that was November 2018. And I have never not had a client. Sometimes I have more, sometimes I have less, but it has been an incredible experience. And I love what I do. I love being a nonprofit success partner. I love helping nonprofits to stop scrambling and start scaling. So that's my story, but I promise that in this podcast that we would also talk about solutions. And so what did I learn from that experience? I learned that 1, the board was uninterested in hearing my pitch to be the CEO. And while you might have considered me young, I was in my late 30s. I was incredibly experienced. I knew the organization inside and out. But what I have come to understand, what I realized much, much later on, many years later, is that I learned at the heels of my CEO, this amazing gentleman who taught me everything I know about community foundations and endowments. But everything that I did, I let him shine. I let him deliver the success to the board. As any good staffer did, I supported my CEO, but I gave it all to him. And so the perception at the board level was that I was not so much his protege, but his junior person. And the perception was not there that I was ready to take over because he didn't put that forth and I didn't push it. In fact, I didn't even realize it was happening. I just let it be. And so what I have learned in my career and now, I guess, as a consultant is that no one's going to toot your own horn, that if you're doing great things, that you need to let people know. And that as an organization, as a leader in nonprofit, that we take for granted that the work will be the proof in the pudding, that people will see the good work that we'll do and they'll know that, of course, you're doing great work in the world and they should support you. But the truth is that that's not always going to happen. And nobody knows your business like you. Nobody knows what you do on a day-to-day basis. No one from the outside, even your board, doesn't know everything that goes into delivering the services and the impact that you deliver. So you've got to toot your own horn. You've got to tell stories over and over and over again. You've got to break down. This is one advice I give to a lot of my nonprofit clients is you've got to break it down into bits and pieces in terms of when you talk about what you do. For instance, I have an organization that feeds seniors, but they also have a shelter and they also, have families in the shelter and they do a wide variety of other things. You can't talk about all those things because donors cannot absorb that. And donors, if they don't understand, they're not going to give. So you've got to break that down. So I encourage her to say, okay, let's talk about seniors. Let's talk about families. Then let's talk about children. Then let's talk about the homeless population. And then if you're talking about homeless, what is it that you do for the homeless, right? Do you bring them in? There's a welcome kit. There's case management, job placement, not to mention the fact that there's 3 meals a day. There's outside organizations that come in. There's mental health counselors, family counseling, transportation for the kids to school. There's a whole lot more that happens to help people uplift their lives and move on from a shelter. And no one knows that better than you or your team, but the outside world doesn't know that. So my advice to you is to toot your own horn, break it down into bits and pieces so people can absorb what it is that you do and they can attach themselves to the thing that they're most passionate about so that they can help you in a way that is meaningful for them. Because fundraising isn't about sales. It isn't about trying to trick people into giving you money. Fundraising fundamentally to me is about relationship building. It's about the match. It's about what I want, what I as a donor want to see happen in the world. And you are the facilitator. You are the organization. You're the person, the vehicle to make that happen. I want to see less families be unsheltered, and you're the one that's doing that work. So I'm going to fund you to do that, but only if I understand what you do, how you do it, how much it costs, and how I can step in to help you. All right, so that is my very first episode of Fundraising Unfiltered. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I think I'm going to end in less than 15 minutes. Please rate it, give me feedback, send me your comments, send me your question, and check out everything on my website at lockstep.com. That's LOCKESTEP.com. All right, I'll see you next time. Have a great one.